Okay, Sam here at Really Love Guitars in the workshop. It's a nice late summer, early autumn Friday, and I'm running through 3 acquisitions this week, and this is the second of 3. All 3 of them are Strats of some sort or other, and this is a Squier Strat, made by Fender of course, and it's the Affinity series. And this is a really handsome beastie. It has an all-over metallic paint job, black with little sparkly bits, which is very attractive. Hardly a mark anywhere. Nice condition. And on the front, it's got this really 1970s dance floor silver fleck pickguard. All a little bit dirty, but nothing that we can't clean up and make really nice and sparkly. It's got a simple Fender Squier Strat type tremolo, which is usable, doesn't too far detune the guitar at this point in time, but we'll see how that shapes up when we've restrung it and done a bit of checking out and cleaning. This guitar has again, it's got a kind of maple neck with a rosewood fingerboard, as you can see. It's made from the it's the equivalent of what do they call it now? Is it agathis? Yeah, I think it's the agathis. Some opinions vary, but it's a Far Eastern hardwood. It's got a nice all-over weight. I think the affinities come in at the right sort of quality feel. Some people think they're ropey. I don't think they're ropey at all. I think they're maybe a little bit boring in their configurations. This one's a bit more interesting because it's got the humbucker at the bridge position, which I think is quite an interesting range of tones. But they're nice because you can change things out. You can add quality pickups in here if you want. You can put different electronics on, and you can certainly upgrade the tuners if you want. And when you do a bit of work on these things, actually they become guitars that you want to keep. They're nice feel and they play nicely too. So this one shouldn't be too hard to put right. Nothing major that we can see about it so far. I've played it. It plays quite nicely. Everything's functioning as it should. Everything in good nick generally, and we're going to have some fun sorting this one out and getting it up to a kind of tip-top shiny condition. And yeah, it shouldn't be too much trouble. So a nice basic unit. This is the 3rd one we've had through here, and I'm actually getting quite confident that these are a good platform for doing things on. I would probably stick with these and not go anywhere near the Bullet Strats or even the basic early No series Strats. Okay, so the Squier Strat Affinity. Watch this space. Right, hello, Sam here. Really Love Guitars. Just looking for my glasses. They're here. So let's kick off. We've had a quick overall tour of this Squier Strat Affinity, and let's get going. Give it a good clean up. I'm just quickly looking around to see what I've got to hand. Where is the polish? Oh, right, okay. I might need to go and take a quick run to get the furniture polished to do this, but I can't see it right now, but I do want to be able to give things a good clean as we go. So bear with me, a small interruption while I go and find it. Right, for polish we have got a nice cup of tea. Claire's outside having a cup of tea. A nice quiet Friday afternoon. Let's get some of this grime off here straight away. Doesn't hurt. We'll clean it more as we go, but just to begin with. Okay, need a bit of lacquer on there. Chip I hadn't seen. It's not gone through to the paint. It's just a chip in the actual lacquer. But we've got plenty of clear lacquer we can touch that up with. I'll give it a good clean in a moment. Right, okay, now let's go. We have enough things. So first things first, take off these horrible old strings. Time to get rid of them. I've got some new ones. There's nothing worse than horrible blackened old strings that come with the guitar. So this was bought from a nice man in High Barnet in London. So another one of my trips into the unknown. I've never been to the far end of the Northern Line before, so that was a first for me. Very pleasant too, very relaxing. Just sit down and fall asleep. And you can't go any further when you get to the end. Right. So I'll pull these, and I did bring my rubbish bag out. That's quite lucky. So we're thinking that with these the Squier Strat Affinity, it's really in need mostly of a good clean. We'll do the full fret levelling and neck treatment, which we always do, and once we've done that, then it'll be a case of putting the neck back on and taking care of the action at the bridge and the nut, and then the intonation to get it absolutely spot on. Right, now these are trapped, so I'm going to need to take them back off. So the through body stringing stuff is sometimes can be a bit annoying. You can often get the string ends caught. I've also got 3 guitars to do and one already on the go, so I'm going to need to find a container for all these parts. No good to lose them. Since the last video, I bought myself a new soldering iron because the last one melted completely during the attempt to rewire a vintage V100, which was sort of almost successful, but it cost, I think I've got 2, that's amazing. Yeah, it cost me, the price of success was 1 cheap soldering iron, so I really learned the lesson of don't buy cheap, because in the time it took me to take care of that wiring, the soldering iron actually melted to a lump, which was really not what I wanted, and I ended up burning myself a few times by the end of the day. Now already this is slightly annoying because it's a bent piece of wire not wanting to go through the guitar and come out the other end, and it's going to need something to push through and free it up. So this is where in a small Allen key comes in handy. I think that's done it. Yep, good. So there's our old set of strings off. I'll just get these out of the way. Right. So let's have a look. What are we going to do? Let's get the neck off first, and we'll do the body and the neck separately. So just a quick check under here. Nothing surprising. Three springs acting on the tremolo. I always like to take these little rubbish bin stickers off the back. I really don't know why people put those on or leave them on. Horrible little things. But we can take them off. And if you get any leftover goo on there, you can always use a drop of rubbing alcohol to take it off. Now when it comes to the neck, we're going to want to match up the screw head that we're going to use with this, what do you call that? The cross on the screw, just to make sure it's the right size. What we don't want is anything skipping and starting to damage the screw, the head on the screw. Otherwise we'll end up with something like we've got on this blue thing over here. which has already mashed up some of the screws on the back. Not from my doing, I have hastened to add. So we're going to slowly take these off a bit at a time and ease it off all the way around. And I want to just be careful so this is mostly supported, we don't want it falling on the floor. The key thing when you're taking a neck off is to release the pressure evenly all round, and before you lift the body away you've got to be on the lookout for any shim. And a shim is just a piece of material of many different kinds that's used between the heel of the guitar and the neck itself to change the angle that the neck comes out of the guitar. So what we need to do is, if there is a shim under there, we need to take this off slowly and carefully so that we can see what's under there. We don't just lose it on the floor, but also that we can see where it is. And if a smart thing to do is, if you do find a shim under there, is mark the position of the shim. Even if it looks like it's stuck on, still mark it, because chances are it will fall off at some point. So here comes the neck, or the body away from the neck. There's no shim under there, and that's fine. I'm just looking very carefully. No shims whatsoever, so we don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to take off the screws and put them in our box of parts. And what I'll do is I'll clean every single piece of this as we go, just give everything a polish. Now what I'd like to do first of all is, that's not all the way through, so this neck we can put somewhere safe out the way, sorry, this body, but we're going to do stuff with it fairly soon, so I'm not going to hang it up like I often do. And I'm going to put the neck off to one side first and come back to that. Yeah, find somewhere safe that it's not going to come to any harm. And in fact what I'll do is I'll hang it from one of our straps, which is the safest place to put necks out of the way, and guarantee that they don't come to any peril. And what I want to do is really just get into cleaning all this up and taking everything off, so that we'll give everything a complete thorough clean. There's no reason why not. It makes the guitar look great, and also you get to check out if there are any faults. Even though, technically speaking, you don't need to take all this stuff off, but we're going to do it because, as I say, it gives us a chance to, or a reason, to have a poke around and make sure everything's in order. So right down to even such things as these little bridge saddles. They're probably already intonated, or they may be intonated depending on who's owned this guitar before, but I'm still going to take them off because I want to clean them individually. And I'm just looking to see the two short ones go at the far ends, so sometimes that's different on different guitars. But I'm going to take all of this off because part of the deal here is just to go the extra mile and make sure that, for example, we'll get under here and we'll clean up this tremolo plate so it's spanking new and shining. You know, note or hint or tip for any of you people selling stuff on eBay: go the extra mile on those things. You know, you want to give somebody a reason to buy your guitar and not somebody else's. Then take the extra time, make the extra effort, and I'll show you once we've got these off how dusty and filthy it is under here. And you wouldn't be able to clean it unless you took these saddles off. And they're very easy to take off and very easy to put back on. We just held on by this screw and this spring. How far in they are screwed is down to is what you do to set the intonation, and we're going to redo that at the end anyway, so it doesn't matter that we take this off. And we'll clean each of those saddles individually too. So look at all that nasty old goo under there, and we get a chance now to go and give that a shine up, and it really doesn't hurt at all to have given that a good quick clean through. Even if we can clean it a bit more, just give it a quick go over. And you can see there's a lot of dirt coming off here, as well as dust. So you're doing kind of a dust and a clean all in one go. Now I'm going to prise off these knobs And to do that I'm going to use some plastic which I have here from an old pick guard, and that plastic often gets used to make new truss rod covers and things like that, but it can also be used when we want to lever off a tone knob or something like that without doing any damage. So you can get tools for this, but I'm going to do it by hand. And often what you find when you do that is underneath you find the original cellophane that's been left under there from the days when this had a protective cellophane layer on it, and somebody who bought the guitar just pulled it all off and everything that was left behind got caught underneath the tone pots. So we can get rid of that in a moment, either by gently cutting it with a blade, or we can be a bit clever and take it off some other way. Now I'm using this this is leverage because what I don't want to do is push any sharp things under here and scratch the pick guard. So I'm kind of putting joint pressure on both sides. There's a lot of goo and dust under there. As I say, there are tools for most of these jobs. You will find online in very well respected luthier shops. You can buy all the equipment you need. The point about this is to show you that you can do it at a low-tech version. Most of the time, everything that you can buy a tool for can be done without buying a tool. It's not absolutely critical. That's interesting, that doesn't want to come off, that's unusual. Yeah, it's not absolutely critical, but you'll find that in almost all cases the job is doable without it, but the tool just makes the job a whole lot easier. And why not? Now I'm not going to take this any further apart, this tremolo, because there's nothing wrong with it. I've got perfectly cleaned under there, and everything around this end of it is in good order. So there's nothing about it that requires me to take it any further. If there was some part of it I couldn't clean, I would then continue to dismantle it, because it's worth it getting that good clean done just the once. But in this case we've been able to reach through to every part that we need to clean, and so there's no point disturbing it if it's already been set up and there's nothing about it that's that needs changing in its setup. It's firmly anchored in place, and we'd be ready to add the bridge saddles back in when we're ready to restring and intonate the guitar. Now what I would do, which I haven't got right now, is I would get myself some water and give these tone pots a quick wash in soapy water, the knobs, just so that they're a little bit cleaner. After all, you know, who wants somebody else's finger goo on your nice fresh guitar? And we're going to do the same, by the way, with the neck. We're going to take off all that DNA that somebody else left on there that you don't want to live with if you're buying a new guitar. Now this is a little bit fiddly. I don't really like using a knife here, but this part of the guitar is hidden underneath the knob, so it's never a problem. You're never going to do any damage as long as you're careful, and just allows me to pull up this leftover bit of cellophane, which just feels grotty. It feels like it's come from some other age, and now we can get rid of that, and we can go around the rest of it and clean it nicely. So I'm just doing that little fiddly bit for a minute. Hard to grip hold of because it's, by its definition, it's a piece of sort of crumpled cellophane. It's very thin, but we'll get it all off. So again, what we'll do next is I'll pull up this scratch plate so you can just we'll together have a quick look under the plastic, just to have a quick look and make sure that everything's in order. I know the guitar plays, so I don't expect to find anything untoward, and equally, unless I had some particular modification that I was definitely focused on putting in place, I also wouldn't want to mess around with anything. On you know, sticking to the principle that if it ain't broke, please don't fix it. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that's the cellophane detritus out the way. We'll just put on a finer point, and we'll just take off these pick guard screws, and again we'll just set them to one side for a minute. It's perfectly safe to use a power driver with this stuff. Just better to have one that's variable, so you can really adjust the sensitivity with this, and you can know when to go fast and know when to slow down and reduce force, because you don't want to be stripping the screw threads in these in the wood of the guitar. Again, I'm just taking off as much as I need to do to check the workings of the guitar, and to be sure that everything's tidy, neat, and there's nothing loose and hanging off. I don't really want to mess with any of the electrics under here, and I do as little as possible in that respect just now. So I'm also, while I'm here, I'm going to give it a little bit of dusting. Not that this area's seen, but it's still got a lot of build-up of dust over the years. So if we take some of it away, there's just generally less around to clog into switch gear and things like that. Because I don't know if you've ever played an electric where the pickup position selector is crackly. Well, that's usually the result of dust building up on the contacts over time. So anything we can do to just cut down the amount of dust that's built up in this guitar is good. So just lift it up. You can see that it's routed for actually three humbuckers. It's I don't know what they call this, swimming pool routing, but it's a lot of material taken out of the body there, and it gives us the option to have three humbuckers potentially in this guitar. I'm not sure I've seen one of these of that configuration, but it's entirely doable. Now, having done that, what we're left with is a very dirty scratch plate. I'm going to put one or two of these screws back in just now to keep it in position so we can get a bit of a grip on it and clean it. Bearing in mind there are a lot of screws, so you just want to lightly put them in until you're sure that everything's in the right position. It's always a case of don't overcommit to anything on here. Just get a few in to hold the thing steady, and then do your cleaning. And once we've given this a bit of a polish and clean, in a way we're probably ready to move on straight onto the neck. And it's very satisfying because the basics of this guitar are in really good nick. It means the amount of remedial work we've got to do is minor. There is a bit of lacquer repair I'm going to do down there. I'll try and show you in a moment, but it's hardly noticeable because it hasn't gone down to the wood. But there's a lot of old built up grime on here that would be nice just to take away. And you can see I'm just using silicone polish to do this. I'm not taking any soap to it or anything like that. I'm letting the polish sort of lift off the grime for the time being. Perfectly capable of doing it. I don't want to chuck a load of soap on there or other abrasive stuff of any kind. I want to keep it as nice and as shiny as possible. And again, can use a quick look, and I can still see there's goo built up alongside the pickups in the gaps. So I'm going to give that a little bit more hard work. Just to give that really nice freshened up feel. And I'll do the edges of these pickup covers too, and the tops, just to remove any historical grime. There's nothing like a fresh, clean, well looked after looking guitar, and there's no reasons, providing the basic unit here is in good shape, there's absolutely no reason why this guitar, when we've done it, won't look nearly new, because there's nothing substantially wrong with it that would make it look otherwise. It's just been played a lot and not cleaned, and as you can see, cleaning it usually means taking a few things off to get, so I spit on it, a few things off to get at the basic underlying areas. But a tiny bit more down the edge of this pickup. I'm just trying to check this out. What's causing that? Is it still a little build-up of grease? But you can see already that that's quite shiny and clean. And if we put everything back on from that point, you know, we feel like we're dealing with a nearly new guitar, which is a nice touch. and it's taken me 10 or 15 minutes to put the effort into it. I highly recommend that if you want to sell something, take the time. There's nothing here that's gonna that you're going to break by doing it. Even if you don't know about guitars, you are just cleaning. You're taking off the obvious bits that are meant to be taken off, and you're just doing a bit of cleaning, housekeeping. I'm using a foam pad with a pointed tip to try and get into the edge of that pickup. That's nice. Done. Okay, so I'm going to just give it once more over. I'm going to put the rest of the screws back in to anchor the pick guard. This is fine. There's nothing loose in the pickup jack, the jack input. That's all good. So it remains on this guitar to wash the knobs. Quick toothbrush scrub with some soap. Wash them, and then we will put them back on. And then the only thing we've got to worry about on this body will be a little bit of lacquer that we'll add on to the place where it's chipped off on the bottom. But that's a sign of how minor that is. I hadn't even seen it, and I've had this guitar a few days, so it's hardly noticeable. But we'll, again, to go the extra mile, we'll put on some extra lacquer, and then we'll sand it smooth, and we'll bring it to a shine with wonderful micro mesh cloths. A whole series of staged sanding cloths which can bring fresh lacquer up to a really nice shine, which you can then work on with a bit of polish, and you've got something that's almost new again. So that's really nice. Okay, so I'm just going to take a momentary break while I go and find some soapy water to do the knobs, and then we'll get this thing ready and we'll move on to the neck. Okay, body done. Very nice looking. I mean, here we have a very shiny, very clean looking guitar. The bridge saddle's put back on. Everything looks like it's new, and why shouldn't it? It's a really nice, clean, fresh look, and really complements the metallic black paint to have it so nicely tidy. It can use still a polish, and as I say, there's a bit of work to do somewhere on here where there has been an invisible, there it is, right on the bottom. There's a little chip on the lacquer which we will touch up. But pretty much ready to go in every other way, and we'll then set these bridge saddle positions precisely when we come to do the intonation later. So it's on to the neck, and this is a time-consuming part of the operation. And to do this, we're going to be very precise about preparing the neck so that whatever we do to it, it doesn't come to any harm. First thing, actually, I'm going to do is I'm going to give this neck a clean. There's a number of ways you can do this. Some people like to do it with a solvent like naphtha, which is apparently lighter fluid, and I'm going to have a quick look and see if that suits me, because it's a chemical, chemical solvent, and let's see what it lifts off and see how much difference it makes to this fret. In my book, that doesn't seem to pull much of the oil off. I'm looking to make sure that it can get rid of. Oh, it's not too bad actually. There's a bit of a stink, but I don't think. Well, I'll try it this time. We'll do things different ways each time. So I'm going to do each one of these frets, spill it everywhere. Do each one of these frets with quite a brisk rub down to get rid of the finger grease, and just clean the fretboard a little bit. And we'll see how easy this is to do with naphtha or lighter fluid. Of course, it's more expensive than doing it with water and a little bit of very fine sandpaper, which is another way of doing it. But this is probably quite easy in the long run. I think it does actually lift the grease quite well, although it doesn't make as much dirty water goo as when you do it with sandpaper and water. It seems to be quite efficient. Don't forget, this is this is years of people's dead cells and oil from their fingers, which the wood probably likes. Fills all the little, fills in all the little pores and grain on the wood, and gives it quite a nice, rich, dark, vintagey sort of look. But you know, we find that, I'm not sure about you, but when you get a guitar, you're not really keen to inherit somebody else's finger cells and grime. So just like we did with the body, giving this a sort of a courtesy hygiene once over, not only improves the look of it, just makes it feel better, but also it gives people a sense they're starting with something from a blank slate, which can be their guitar, not carrying the residue of someone else's. So let's have a look. How's that done? Yeah, I'm good with that. Passed the test. Worth having. Okay, so we now move on to the next part of this, which is getting the neck ready to work on. So in the neck setup, we do a number of things. First thing we do is we do a clean, like you just saw. The next thing we do is we level the frets. The reason we do that is that so far in the Relove workshop, every single guitar we've had, irrespective of the price or the manufacturer, comes to us with uneven frets. Now I've lost my blade. That's annoying. It's going to be under here, isn't it? Yeah, so every single guitar has had uneven frets on it. How does this happen? There it is. And it seems to be a function of every single guitar that we get. When you have uneven frets, the downside of uneven frets, it means that what can happen is when you're playing the guitar, and playing the guitar further up the neck, when you're pressing down and fretting a note, if a fret up here is too high, the clearances by this time, when you fret notes on here, the clearances increase as you go further down here, but they're still very small. And if you press a note down here and there's a high fret here, and it's a bit higher than that tiny clearance, what you'll get is a buzzing note or a choked note, which means usually happens up here. You press a note here, and instead of playing that note associated with that fret, it will play the note associated with the high fret, which means it's unplayable in terms of gigging or recording or whatever. And that's the consequence of having uneven or randomly high frets. And every single guitar has them so far. I've not found one that doesn't. You think to yourself, why? How can that be? I mean, surely it's not beyond the big manufacturers to put this right. And I think you have to stop and think about the mechanical manufacture of these guitars. They're made on production line, and then slots are cut with saws, and then pieces of pre-bent wire with a tang, which is a kind of little metal down bit, are pressed into there with some sort of either a machine or a physical kind of not pliers, but a clamp that presses these in, and they stick in with glue. And that's going to be slightly imprecise. There's no scientific method of making sure that every single one of these things is squeezed in exactly the same amount, or that on every fret the little saw trench that you've dug is exactly right, or there isn't a piece of hard wood here and a softer piece of wood there, and they don't quite sit evenly. So there's always going to be uneven frets, and with the consequences I've just mentioned, that they cause, when you lower the action to where you really want it, the lower you go, if you like, or the way of saying it, the higher the uneven fret is, the more problems you're going to get with buzzing and choked or incorrect notes playing. So what you'll find is that on most guitars that you inherit, either new from the shop or second-hand from an eBay buyer, their action is usually set to the lowest it can go before it encounters the problems associated with these uneven frets, or the highest fret in these uneven frets. And if you get a guitar that has a very high action, you can usually tell that that will that will point you towards the fact that there's probably quite a bit of seriously uneven frets to be dealt with. But even if you don't, you can rest assured there will be, because, as I say, in our unscientific but nonetheless quite real-world survey, out of 22 guitars passing through the Reloved workshop so far, not a single one has come through without any high frets. The nearest that did was this vintage brand V100, which had maybe 15 or 20% of the frets on the guitar were uneven, compared to, on average, what is normally somewhere around the 70% mark, if not sometimes higher. So it's a real prevalent problem all the way through. Every guitar has them, and what we do is we go through this process to level them so that you have then free reign or free choice of how you set your action, and you don't only have to have the action set according to the limitations of the frets. So that's what this is about. And you might ask yourself, why isn't it done in the factory? And when you stop and watch this video, if you do, and you see how long this process takes, you will understand why the factory, and for example why the shop doesn't do it, because they're working to very tight profit margins in both cases, and the amount of cost that it would represent to have an individual worker spend, even if they did it quicker with better tools, what must be at least an hour to do this job properly, then that could not be economically viable given the price points that they have to manufacture and sell these guitars for in order to be profitable in a very, very tight price competitive market. So that reality means that pretty much every guitar you ever see or ever buy from another player, or buy from an online retailer, or from a big music store in your home city, every guitar, it's an incredibly rare minority that has been set up properly. And if it is set up properly, or if they are set up properly, it will be done either by a guitar tech post sale usually, or it'll be done by somebody who learns to do it themselves. Interestingly, I spoke to the hosts of a big UK guitar manufacturer who run a podcast. Very nice guys. But I asked them a question on the podcast the other day about, and the question was, at what point, or what price point in your shop do you start doing a full setup on your guitars that you sell? And the answer was really surprising, and they didn't really answer the question. So in effect, the answer was never, which I found quite surprising, to say the least. They talked a lot about, or a bit about, being willing to set things up a certain way if a customer wanted it, like adding certain kinds of strings, or if a customer had a particular request about having the action set a particular way, they would do it as a request. But there was absolutely no mention of fret leveling. There's certainly no mention of taking the time to do intonation either. So that's quite surprising, because I'm still trying to find out, at what price point would you expect, or can you dependably expect a Fender, for example, to be properly set up, as I would call it. And so far, the research confirmed that in that shop, the example of that shop, or in the case of that shop, there doesn't seem to be a point at which the guitar is taken off the wall or taken out of the crate and put through this process. For the reasons I've probably outlined. I can't be certain about it, but it seems to make a bit of sense. However, there are some still budget guitars, I guess. Vintage range, for example, made by John Hornby Skews, of which you'll probably see loads in this workshop and on the Reloved Guitars Facebook page. I'm a great fan of theirs because not only are they really high quality for your money, but they're also, it appears that they're also set up at the factory better than any other factory manufactured guitar that I've yet come across. And I can't be sure about this without going and doing a factory tour and talking to the people behind it, which maybe I will one day, but right now they just happen to be the most playable guitars by default when they arrive here, which is quite interesting. So I'm pretty convinced that they do something at the factory. They do some of this setup, but again, it doesn't seem to save them from uneven frets. Yeah? Oh, okay. All right, love. Family's going to football. Left me in the shed. Worst things have happened. Okay, so as I've been talking away, you can see the amount of time it takes to cut masking tape into little pieces, to cover up the increasingly small size of frets as we go up the fretboard. And we're doing this because, having gone to the trouble of cleaning the fretboard and it being in nice condition, you know, our job is to add value to this guitar, not to take it away. And so we are going to protect our investment of time by going to this great length to ensure that the nice rosewood fretboard is adequately and completely covered before we begin the next process, which gets quite messy, and we don't want to ruin the hard work we've already done. So the interesting thing about the guitar setup is, like many people, I've owned guitars for, I don't know, maybe 30 years and had never paid someone to do a setup for me, nor did I really know what it entailed. But I think the most important thing is I didn't know what it would give me. Quite often I think there's a world of luthiers out there thinking, why don't we get more business? Why don't guitarists understand how big a difference having a guitar setup will make? You know, there's all these people out there playing guitars, and here we are standing by to do all this great work, but they just don't bring them, and they just refuse to want to spend the money on it. And my experience was I didn't spend the money because I had no way of making sense of what the benefit would be. You know, you have to get people in guitar magazines talking non-stop about setups and get your guitar set up right, but nobody in the guitar magazine seemed to take the time, not just to explain what it entailed, which they didn't, because a bit like car mechanics, they seem to like to keep it as a mysterious dark art that only a few wizards knew. But so not only didn't they explain the components or constituent parts, what it entailed, but they also failed spectacularly to communicate what the benefits would be to me. And that's something that you find in all walks of business. So whilst I was aware that there was this thing called setup, and that these wizards called luthiers or guitar techs would do this kind of thing, I was absolutely no wiser about why I would do it, why I would chuck my £35 or whatever the price was. And so I didn't. And the only time I came to learn this was out of sheer frustration and necessity. And actually it started with a Martin, sorry, I keep saying Martin, it's not, it's a Taylor Baby, little mahogany dreadnought that I bought in Edinburgh a few years ago when I was working there on a short job. And I had a day free and a little bonus from work or something, and treated myself to this little guitar that I really liked the tone of when I sat in the music shop, guitar it was, and played it. And I came home, brought it home, and over the months I tried my best to live with this guitar, and I loved the tone, I loved the size of it and everything. But I tell you what, I could not live with the tuning, and I couldn't also make sense of what was happening with the tuning. So to describe it to you, I would tune the guitar up to a tuner or to a concert pitch, note or whatever, and then I would play a chord, and it would sound, open chords might just sound, a D chord might just sound ropey, it wasn't quite right, and then I would start to tune a bit more, thinking I've obviously heard it wrong, and I would tune the strings, the open strings a little bit, tune by harmonics, tune any which way I could. think I'd get it right, and then I'd play some more chords and it might just sound okay if I played up here, but if I played down here it sounded horrible. And it just, in my head, it was I couldn't get it in tune. Now that isn't true. I was getting it in perfect tune, but the chords I was playing, particularly open chords, were not playing in tune. The notes, I didn't know at the time, but the notes I was playing were being bent slightly sharp. And as a result, the whole chord that I was playing just sounded awful. Now, you know, if you're a newcomer to playing the guitar, to you that just sounds like you're just not getting it. You don't know how to play the guitar, and you're never going to get it because everything you do sounds awful. By the way, this is the next stage. Is I turn this over, or I hold it like this, and my job is to just make these things connect up. And the reason I do that, rather than wind them around and flap them over each other, is that makes it easy to get off at the end. So yeah, so I couldn't live with this guitar, and it was driving me mad. And I started researching online, as you do, and I found millions of people in forums talking about the vagaries of these little small 3/4 size guitars, these baby Taylors, and they were temperamental, and people were saying, well, why don't you try tuning it up half a tone, and then why don't you try putting thinner strings on, and but tuning them up and tighter, or whatever. All manner of things. You know, people talking about moisture and humidity and dehumidifiers and la la la, and then people talking about the mathematical limitations of short scale guitars, and and still I couldn't find a solution. And I don't think I ever quite found a technical point of contact in Taylor, but I was at that stage. I was either going to contact them, or actually more likely I was just going to give up and sell it. So I was kind of lining up to sell it. And then all that happened is one day, well, not one day, I kind of started to really try and think the problem through, and I noticed that actually the guitar was playable. I quite liked the way it played. That's all I could experience it as. I liked the way it played when I had a capo on it, particularly because I used to play, whatever, Tom Petty's Free Falling or something with the capo on the 2nd fret. And so no matter what I did, if I capoed this little guitar on the 2nd fret, I could play Free Falling and enjoy it, and it sounded great, and everything was in tune. All the chords I played in it were in tune. And yeah, as soon as I took the capo off, tuned it to open strings, tried to play it, it sounded not right again. And I started to think, hang on, if it works with the capo on, I almost resigned myself to living with the capo on the 1st and tuning it down half a tone in order to capo it and play as if this part of the guitar didn't exist. And then it struck me that if that's what I'm doing, all I'm doing is cutting the nut out. And then it just hit me that about 3 years after struggling with this guitar, that the problem had to be the nut. And what I did was, I did something very simple, is I capoed the guitar, and I took that as the nut, and I watched the height of the E string over that 1st fret when you capoed it, because it seemed to me that should be the correct height wherever you capoed it. And I looked at that height, and it was a fraction of the height over the 1st fret when you took the capo off and the strings came over the nut. And it was clear to me that the slots in the nut, or the nut itself, was too high, and the consequence, the strings were way too high above the 1st fret. And what was happening is that the pressure required to push them down to form the chords was resulting in all the notes going sharp, just to enough degree to make the whole thing sound like a pile of crap and put you off wanting to keep the guitar. In some cases, put me off even thinking I could play any guitar at all. And I'm not brilliant, but you know, especially if you're not brilliant, your confidence takes a knock. So that made me realise that the nut is the single most impactful part of the guitar setup on the playability. Of course, the action down this end is you need to set it, and I learned fairly quickly that to have a free range in setting that, you need to level the frets as a start point. So the core of my setups are level frets, setting the action down this end, and then tailoring it with getting the nut action right, so that the playability at this end and the resulting action down this end are perfect, because you are never having to push the strings down more than about 1/3 of a millimetre to touch the first few frets. And ever since I started putting that into practice, every single neck I've done just plays beautifully. and it can be the crappiest neck in the world, and you can make it play beautifully because you can put in place those three things that make a guitar playable. And as soon as I discovered that, those 3 years spent pulling my hair out and wanting to throw this guitar, a particular guitar, away, suddenly became really valuable years, because it taught me that that was the core, the foundation of a good setup. And that's why we're here doing this. So, long story, but it's a long job getting this done. We are now ready. One thing we need to do is, before we do any fret leveling, we need to ensure that our neck is straight or flat. And the neck straightness or bentness is controlled by the truss rod. And the reason you're able to adjust that is because when you, well, basically because the bend of the neck can be affected by a number of things. It can be affected by, I don't know, temperature, humidity, but also the gauge of the strings you put on, the amount of pressure that the guitar is under because of the strings. But whatever the variations in where you live, the temperature, humidity, the kinds of strings you use, and the feel of the guitar you like, whatever the variations in that, your strings need a room to vibrate. And what's interesting is to imagine how it happens. I'm just wondering if I can demonstrate it with a piece of wire. Probably can't, but I guess I'm going to try. So imagine the piece of wire, your string, going down the length of your guitar. Do you remember when you were a kid and you did that game that went like that? It's not bad, this demo, it's working. You did a string wire like that, and somebody jumped over it in the middle. Okay, in a way, imagine that that's what your guitar string is doing. It's not quite as extreme as that, but when you pluck a guitar string, it doesn't just go from side to side, it goes round like that, effectively. And so you can see that the circle it describes in the middle is bigger than the circle it describes at the ends, and so it's travelling further in the middle, and which means in the middle it needs to have that much room to go round, whereas it doesn't need that much room at the ends. So that's why you have a bow in your guitar neck, so that there is room for the string to do that. If you straighten your neck too much, then the string tries to do that, and it's actually hitting the frets as it goes round, and it will either sound deadened and choked off, or it just won't sound any good. So when we go back to put the neck back onto the body, we're going to dial back in some relief, it's called, into the neck, so that when we're ready, our strings will rotate nicely, or vibrate, or oscillate, whatever you want to call it. When plucked, they will have room to vibrate and describe that circle. And we do that with the Allen key adjuster at this end. But in the meantime, when we come to level the frets, we want them all level. Although it's not the position this guitar will be in, but we want them level to begin with. So we look down the guitar neck, and we see if we've got either a hump or a bow in it. You know, a hump convex, or a bow in it concave. I think people use the terms differently. So is it concave or is it convex is the simplest way. In this case, we have a slight concavity. If you follow the line, it's exaggerated when you look down at foreshortened like this. Slightly concave looking down that side, and slightly concave that side. So to be absolutely precise about this, I'm going to use my little diagram, which I keep and read wrong every time. The problem I've got is that I found this out when I was learning to glide a couple of months ago, or a year ago. When somebody would say bank left, sometimes in my mind I'll just get that mixed up and go right. Don't know why. And so equally, when I come to do this, quite often I'll look at this and it'll say, tell me exactly which one, I'll do the opposite. So I'm going to talk it through this time. So I said we've got some concavity, right, which means we are starting there and we want to straighten it up, which tells me to turn this Allen key clockwise. So hurrah, I have talked it through clockwise. Here we go. So I'm going to line up the Allen key, find the right size, and if that's not the right size, then we have to go and look for another one. Is this the right size? It's getting the angle to engage it. That feels a tiny bit small. So the next stage of the game is going to find the right key, and it can can be really annoying. Sometimes you don't know whether you're actually got it inserted correctly. No marriage puns and jokes here, please. And then what happens is you suddenly find that the only size that fits it is the one you haven't got. Okay, well this thankfully is the one we have got. Right, so we engage our thing, and then having done all that, I've forgotten which way it has to go. So we're going from slight concavity upwards, so we're going to go clockwise, but we're only going to go clockwise a tiny amount because the amount of concavity was tiny. So I just did that much. Right? And I'm going to then pick it up and just have another quick look at it, and if that's pretty much flat, then I'm going to run with that. Can't do any damage, right, unless you kind of crank it right to the end and force it. A surprising number of these guitars, I found the truss rod doesn't actually work at all. Not a lot you can do when that happens. You just do the best you can. If you can't get a playing action out of it, then you're stuffed, really. Your guitar's a write-off. And occasionally that happens. It's nobody's fault. It's just the truss rod doesn't work, and you can't make any more adjustment. Some people say you can force curve the neck with a weight and leave it there for a week. You can. If that's the only way you're ever going to get to play this guitar again, I recommend it if you're really stuck. Okay, so we now have our straight neck, and then the next thing we're going to do is, and we're going to do this bit for information's sake only. We don't need to do this bit, and the reason we don't need to do this bit is because I've already decided I'm going to level all of the frets at once. However, I want to know, for information research purposes, roughly what percentage of these frets are uneven, and by how much roughly. And it's not scientific. I may take a picture of it once I've marked it up, but I just want to know for my own purposes, partly because I've yet not come across one that doesn't have this problem. But technically I don't need to do it because I'm going to anyway level all of them to the same level, which means it doesn't matter how many you've got uneven, because this will take care of it. But I'm doing it for info purposes. So we get this fret leveling tool, which is a piece of aluminium cut into 4 sides, and the 4 sides allow you to straddle 3 frets, and you have to do this by crossing 3 frets, no more. But as you go up, the frets get close together, so you turn around and use a shorter side on your tool. So start with the longest side down here, cross the first 3 available frets, and what you do is you try and rock the tool side to side over the middle fret. And if you can rock it, it means the middle fret is higher than the ones on either side, and you mark that high spot. First fret, unusually, had no problems in it. This could make a monkey of me. Second fret, no discernible problems. Third fret, telltale clicking. Here we go, that's the first. And it's got 2 spots. There's a gap, and then it comes back. So I can then mark up on here what I know to be high spots. And I'm marking it on this thing first, on the paper, so that a couple of reasons. Well, I'm going to mark it with a marker pen, but I've had some trouble previously with that bleeding down the side, leaving me cleaning off fretboards later, and it's a pain. So I'm sticking to pencil as much as I can until I absolutely need to mark the fret itself, in which case I'll go back over it in a minute. There's a little spot on the edge there, which I'll mark again with pencil, and only there. And now we're coming towards needing to change over edges on our fret leveling tool. Sorry, our fret rocker. I'll change over, move to a new fret. Now this is interesting. This guitar now, at the moment, as it stands, is one of the best conditioned in terms of level frets that I've come across so far. This could go horribly wrong any minute for the manufacturer. And I have to say, if I find one that has none, I will conclude that it's very likely that it's been done by a luthier or a guitar tech, or just somebody who knows that this is something you can do. I'm less likely to think that it's a factory producing Fender Squier guitars that suddenly started doing this work as a finishing operation on its guitars. Okay. And anywhere I hear this clicking noise, I mark up the high fret. So we've got a few. It's not perfect by any means. It's quite a bit less than some guitars. My experience so far has been that the Squiers have been full of high frets by and large. I would kind of expect a Fender Squier to have plenty of high frets. Only because that's been my experience so far. And this one is showing up a fair few at this end now. And again, this typically would be the end where uneven and high frets would start to interfere with, if you were a lead guitarist. This would be the bit where you would hit the limits of your playing action, and you'd have to have it set higher than that, a certain height of playing action, in order to not get dead bum notes when you're trying to play some lead guitar piece up here. As I say, this is pretty much for info only. I'm just going to support this neck because I'm rocking. It's annoying me when I'm doing this. Yeah. So yeah, these ones up here at this top part of the neck, this would be really where it would come in to become an irritant or a problem for a lead guitarist. And as I said earlier, that what you'll then find is that whatever map of high frets or uneven frets we come to on this neck, you can be fairly certain that somebody previously has tried to lower the action to make usually a nice fast low action. Not too many people I know deliberately choose for a high action, but they will have tried to set a low action, and then it will have stopped at the point at which they found themselves getting choked or buzzing notes, and that would have been the kind of limit to how far they could set it, and they would have stopped there and called it a day, got on and played it. And the thing about this, of course, is that this guitar played pretty okay beforehand, so you know, the high frets, they're not the end of the world. They don't stop you playing the guitar, and some of these guitars play quite nicely with all their high frets, but it just means that the action is compromised and constrained to a certain height, which isn't necessary. I guess that's what the point of this is. It's just not necessary. If the frets were more accurately levelled, which is the work we're doing now, you would find that you had a greater range available to you. So what I'm doing now is having marked this up, actually I would say that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, that's more than 50%. You're into the good old, yep, it's a familiar Fender Squier pattern. That's 60 odd % of the frets have got problems on this guitar. Totally what I would expect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark with a permanent marker. I'm going to just make a little permanent marker directly onto the frets, following the pattern that I marked on the paper where the high spots are. And I'm just be very careful as I do this not to run off the ends and mark the sides of the neck, because it can be really annoying. And I'm going to end up marking these frets twice. The first time, because I want to make sure that as I go down with this file now, I want to be absolutely sure that the file is taking off all the high spots. And the second time is when I'm going to use the marker to check that I'm reprofiling the shape of the fret properly, but we'll come to that stage in the process in a minute. So let's just get this set up somewhere comfortable. Right, so I'm now going to do, if I wasn't doing this to find out the state of the neck, we could have skipped that whole last bit with the pen at that stage, and I would have just masked off the thing, leveled the neck and said, right, here we go. So I get this fret leveling file, and I start right at the edge, and I just, with not too much pressure, I just ride the fret file all the way down, covering all frets, and I can see already little shining bits of fret metal being taken off, and I go all the way down, try to avoid that chatter, it's not good, and all the way down the neck, and I'm coming into the middle as I go, and working across. And the flatness of this file will ensure that every fret is touched by the file, and I can see now there's a pile of shiny little bits, so we've taken quite a bit of material off, and I can see it's taken off most of the black marker, which means we've touched or treated most of the high spots, and where we haven't, I'm just going to go back over and make sure I take some more off until I get that high spot, because it might be very high and I need to do several runs at it. I think that's got it. So I can do at this stage is, just to be safe, I'll brush away my metal swarf, because I don't want that kind of getting into the fingerboard or scratching the neck. And having levelled, what I would say now is I've probably levelled all the frets. I'm now going to just go back and do a quick manual check on every fret, but particularly paying attention to the ones that I knew, or I know were high the first time, because I can still see the marking. Right, and there's one right on the edge there that I can tell because there's still a little bit of black marker. So I'm just going to run that fret to the ground so that I get rid of that high spot. And then, as I say, just whiz up all the ones, even the ones that you didn't touch on, just check them in case you've created some new problems by levelling, or as you think you've levelled. But very importantly, check the ones you've marked so that you can tell that you've actually addressed the problems that were there. And you can see I'm sort of picking more randomly now, or less thoroughly. I'm just picking spots. I'm picking on bits that I've done and that I know. Let me just get this to stay still. I'm hitting on the bits I know were a problem before, just to be absolutely sure, and then a couple of checks across the other bits. Okay, so we still have a problem there. That's interesting. Okay, so I know that one is not quite done. I'm just going to take a bit more off there, off the edge. Come back and check it. Okay, in this part it's good, right at the edge it's still not so good, and the same here. So sometimes this file can be hard to get to work right to the edges, and you need to kind of let it lean off the edge a bit to make it work. And once you do, you'll usually find that it takes care of the high spots. And it can be quite hard to address the ones right up here, because unless you turn the file around and come back to ensure that you've covered everything this way as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick check again, as having done a bit more at the top end there, and pick some high spots. Tiny bit still there in that middle one. Yep, okay, done. So that's our process of levelling the frets. What we now know is, unlike any time in this guitar's life to date, we now have for the first time a truly level set of frets with the neck straight. What we then will do is we're going to get the same marker pen, and I'm going to mark all along the top of every single fret, even the ones that weren't uneven, because what we're going to need to do, since our fret file has now taken a bit off every fret and more off the high frets, we are now going to need to dress or reprofile every single fret, because otherwise we'll have strange flat topped frets which will really not play well and will mess up the intonation. So our next job will be to round those off, and that's what this marker pen is for. The marker pen is a really clever and simple way of us knowing when we're working on the fret and when we're, more importantly, it tells us how to avoid going to the top of the fret, because that is the critical thing. We don't want to lose any more height off the top of this fret because we know that height is perfect. So the next stage of this, I'll do a little bit and then stop, but the next stage is to take our 3-point file with a softened edge here, safe edge here, triangular thing, and we start on the fret and we move the file up to the fret, moving backwards and forwards, and we're starting to take the black marker pen off the shoulder of the fret, and then when we've got a little bite we tip it over this way towards the top of the fret, and we take away that marker pen, and you can see the shiny metal coming through, and we know that we're taking metal off the side, the shoulder of the fret if you like, helping to reprofile it, but we also know we're not touching the top of the fret because we can still see black marker on the top. Then we stop, change sides, do the same thing, get a little bite going, and then as you see the shine start to come through, you tip the file over towards the top of the fret like you did on the other side, and you just backwards and forwards, just taking material away from the shoulder of the fret, so that flat spot now is being reduced and reduced as we get closer to the top of the fret. And the job here with your eagle eyes is to stop that and don't go so far that you take the whole lot of marker off the top of the fret. You want to stop and leave a really nice little thin, 1/2 millimetre wide strip if possible. It's hard to see in this light now. A very, very thin strip of marker right down the middle of the fret. And what that means is we've reshaped the fret to a nice arch form, whereas before it had a flat top. We've reshaped that, and we've left the very top of the fret exactly the same height it was when we did our fret levelling. And we'll go along now and do all of the frets in the same way. Probably put some artificial lighting on to counter these shadows because I can't see very well. And we'll come back when that's done, and then we'll be ready to go into a polishing process, which is really why we've got this all masked off. So I will see you a cup of tea later. Okay, we've now got the reprofiling done on the tops of all these frets. I'm going to move this so it doesn't interfere with the recording. Now the job is to polish these back, and this is kind of challenging, this particular part of the job, because we're going to do it using a number of grades of paper, but we're also looking to do it, we've got the challenge here is to remove the scratching off the top of the fret without taking it any lower, and to do that evenly all the way across, and we need to be fairly aggressive with it, but we don't want to take any height off the fret. But we also don't want to leave it and do it so lightly that we leave scratches, because those will then remain right at the end. Even as we go through our different grades of paper, we'll end up with scratches in place, and that will just make the playing action not so great. So we start off with a 320 grit, and I'm going to run this up and down under finger pressure. I'm just going to make sure that all of this fretboard gets the same kind of treatment, and it's at this level here that we're trying to remove the deep scratching that we got with the fret levelling file. As I say, if we don't manage to remove it almost completely at this stage, then our problem will be that further down we're not going to actually get rid of that scratching. We're just going to miss it at this stage, and then just kind of polish around it, if you like, as we go on, and that would mean that we get to the end and those scratches are still more or less there. So I'm trying really hard now to get all of that scratching out. We've kind of run this sandpaper, it's not very good quality actually, but we've kind of run all the aluminium oxide off it. I'm going to change it for another bit, and I'm going to take the risk of going across the frets long ways, providing I do the same amount each way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, think we can safely say that that will be as good as getting rid of any scratches we've got there as humanly possible. And then we go to 600, and we're going to again keep going up and down the frets with finger pressure, because what we want is we don't want to flatten the tops of these frets. We want to let the fingers roll over the frets up and down the sides of them, so that we'll keep that nice profile that we've just spent our time putting back on. Again, 600, fairly aggressive grade of paper, capable of lowering the profile or lowering the height of the fret if we're overzealous. So we're just aiming to make sure everything we do fairly evenly across all frets. And then I'm going to go to 1000. So we've gone 320, 600, 1000, and again just trying to get even coverage wherever we use it. And sometimes the hard bit is actually getting the first couple of frets. So once we've done this with the 1000, I'm going to again go over long ways, just so that we can iron out any little scratches that might remain. Hello. Okay, coming in now, thanks. Time for some food. I'll just whiz across this one, and then we'll stop here and come back and do the remaining papers, or the micro mesh papers, after I've eaten them. So that's us up to 1000. And then from this point onwards, it starts to get dirty, but we're going to work with the micro mesh papers, whole set, right the way up to 12,000 grit, and that will hopefully bring these frets up into a real shine. If you're doing this and at any point of the way you want to stop and just do a check with your fret level or your fret rocker, you should be finding, no matter what you've done, you should find no high spots, and that will tell you that what we've managed to do is wherever we've worked with the sandpaper, we've still taken down the height evenly, so we're on a good foundation now to work onwards with these papers. So we'll come back after having something to eat and we'll get on and finish. Righty ho. Okay, let's get on with it. Dinner. Now we're going to start with we've done 1000 grit, now we're going to move on to 1500. I'm going to use a foam block to do this, and I'm just going to whiz up and down rapidly. Do an extra bit of concentrating on the end ones, because they seem to get missed out very easily. And I'm not going to spend too much time on each one, but I'm just going to go 15 to 18 and onwards, all the way until we get to 12,000. And you'll see that with these micro mesh, beyond this point now, we're really getting into polishing territory rather than abrading. Well, of course it still is abrading, but it feels like it's starting to shine and surface up. And 3002. Six. 4,000 seems to be the magic number. 4,000 starts to get very shiny after this point. Certainly with lacquer, when you get to 4,000, it's starting to get back to the original finish, which is quite miraculous. It looks like a really sort of grey, scoured mess until you get to about 4,000, and suddenly it starts to turn back into the original shiny lacquer, gloss lacquer finish. It's very good. And then when you take a bit of polishing compound and a bit of polish at the end of all of that, you get quite a surprising result. So I'm a great fan of these micro mesh sheets and this combination right the way up to 12,000. It's brilliant. You can see they're a bit dirty, so I've used them for all manner of things, and I've kept a special set clean, a brand new set clean for doing paintwork, lacquer. I don't want to discolour the lacquer on the guitar when I'm trying to shine it back up. So now we have what should be at this stage a very nice and smooth, finish. The kittens will be on their way in as usual. So what I typically do now is use a Dremel, which I've now got to locate because Claire's been using it, and once I've located it, what I also want, slightly tangled up with a load of driftwood. Once I've got the Dremel, I need to also find a polishing. I think we're pretty much at the very last dregs of the polishing bit. I could turn it round, in fact I will turn it round, get the last tiny bit of usability out of it. Here comes Morris, looking for trouble. Hello Morris. Hello. He normally talks to me, but he's a bit quiet today. So I'm just going to push this round back to front and then screw it back in, and we'll just get a little bit more life out of it for one one polish. I'm hoping, and we do need to buy some of these online. As a matter of urgency, I keep forgetting. We can get them in the market tomorrow if necessary, but recent experience has shown me that pretty much anything I buy in the market can be ropey quality. Not everything. Some things are okay, but it's very easy to get ropey quality. Right. Okay. Morris is quite subdued tonight. Normally he's talking away at me. He's doing his own thing. So I'm going to use a bit of RF3 polishing compound. Actually, I'm going to use a bit of 5 for a change, because normally I use 3, and today I'm going to use 5. See if it makes any difference at all. And like normal, this it's no really simple way of putting this onto the frets other than blobbing it on and knowing that the Dremel is going to fling it everywhere sideways as soon as it can. So I'm preparing myself to get covered. You know, as long as you get some on the wheel, it'll do. And then I'll have a bit of noise for a few minutes, so bear with me. And you, Morris. Most important thing here is don't hit the fret with the metal part of the Dremel, or else we'll be repeating the entire levelling process from scratch.
We are just about worn out there. Okay, so we have very mucky fretboard at the moment. We have very nice smooth frets. That's a dirty rag for that purpose. So earlier on I made sure I joined these up in a particular way so that at this point now it's a lot easier, well, somewhat easier. Doesn't always work perfectly. Somewhat easier to pull them off. Should be easier to pull them off, but hey. And once we take all of this off, then we'll give the whole thing a polish over, because it will have picked up quite a bit of grime in this process. It's a bit of mucky process overall. But we'll be pretty much done, and however long this has taken, I usually judge it to be about an hour, probably just over an hour and a quarter, if there's no mistakes or problems along the way. But it's not a quick process, and so far there's no simple way around it or automated way around it. You've got to put the time in. So it's not a pastime for those with very short attention spans. If you're someone like that, take your money and go and pay someone else to do it for you. But if you are a patient, do-it-yourself sort of person, then there's no reason why you can't follow these steps yourself with the lowest of tech tools. You know, this is low-tech, really, setup, low-tech, high quality. But that's the nice thing about it, is you don't have to have all the fancy stuff. And you'll see when we come to setting the action, in my book, you also don't have to have all the clever devices for measuring string heights and whatnot. You can, if you want to set your guitar up exactly according to a manufacturer's specification. That's your prerogative. However, the point I'm making is you don't have to, and you can make a perfectly good playable guitar without those things, and you'll see a little later on that I don't use those things to set the playing action of my guitars. I do it by eye, and it works out perfectly well, because your eye happens to be a very sophisticated, accurate gauge, sophisticated and accurate sensitive organ that can measure and assess distances far better than usually you think, which is great. So a quick bit of polish to get this cleared up, some of the grime that's splattered around while we've done this. Not too much, but just a bit. You might want to make sure it's a bit cleaned up, and then once over on the
tuners, all of which, by the way, just as an examination, look like they're in good condition. So I chuck away this piece of mucky stuff, and what we have is a beautifully fret levelled neck, nice cleaned fretboard, transformed. And if you happen to be my old mate Bob Silver watching this, this is for you, a nice, perfectly personalised, clean fretboard with nobody else's goo on it for you to start again if you're going to buy this guitar, which I'd rather be kind of tickled if it was, but I'm happy for anyone to have this. So we have no more major work we need to do to that. It is absolutely the time to reunite said guitar with its neck. Now, we know that everything about the setup was fine the first time round. Everything was fine the first time round. I'm just going to hang this out of the way for the time being. Don't want too many things getting in the way and causing any scratching on the body of the guitar. I need some bits out, but not that one. Right. So our lovely rejuvenated body. Again, we'll do a final overall polish when we've got it all done. But now we're in a position to refit this neck, and again, we don't worry too much about polishing these bits because they will get sorted at the end. So we're just going to gently tease this neck into place where it was, and I'm going to hold it together while I go over the top and just make sure that we settle it down in the same place. I'm going to position the plate roughly where it was, throw on a couple of screws, and I'm going to do this with a mixture of power driver and also a manual driver. So while that's there, I'm just going to go and choose the one I'm going to do this with, which is probably that one, and I'm going to switch out to get the right sized power head. Oh, here comes Claire with a cup of tea. Thank you so much.
Oh look, it's had a little tidy up. There's a bit of a patch.
Yes, just enough room to put a cup of tea down. That's how I like it. Thank you. So yeah, we're going to go in one corner at a time. I'm just going to let get it in the slots. I should be wearing my special eyes. I just want this to locate the hole. I don't want to lock it in place. I just want to locate the hole. And as we go further down, we'll worry about locating the getting the plate to slot into its position as well as we get close to the end. Like I said before, do everything lightly and things will sort themselves out. They'll find their own natural position where they came from before. They'll pull everything into the right place. And equally, when we get to this point, we can trust that the plate will find its right position too if we let it. We don't jam it into place. And I'm going to stop as the bit tightens up. Okay, so what we've got is a lightly tacked neck, and just always recommend at this point you just look at it, check it, make sure there's nothing obvious out of line. I've put them together before and not noticed that something had caught on this edge, and it wasn't actually anything, there was no physical material caught under there, but it caught itself in a kind of, I don't know, just rubbed up against the edge and caught, and as a result the neck went on at a funny angle and wouldn't go any further, and it threw the whole thing out. So it just needed to come out again, start from scratch, go back to it and do it again, and you wouldn't have known what it was that, if anything, that got in the way. It was just, it stuck, two surfaces rubbing together slightly wrong, with the result that it sat completely skew with, and a fraction of a millimetre there will make a really big difference at the bridge end, or the saddle then, when you're coming to set your action on the guitar. and you'll really notice it if you've put this back in somehow in the wrong way. Okay, I'm going to switch back to a smaller head on this power driver, and I'm going to tip out my little screws, and we're going to put back on the plate on the back. There's nothing we want to do. Tremolo is all set nicely. We're just going to drop all this back together. And again, we're not going to drive anything home on this until we've lined all the bits up. It's always the way to do it. Just don't take it slowly and gently to begin with, and then you can firm everything up as you get closer to it, or closer to the end. It's the same principle I apply to making wooden decks in gardens and things. Always start loose and only tighten up when you're sure all your components are in the right place. Very nice. So, nicely back together. Nice finish to it. Lovely shine. Everything about it nice. I'm just checking. There's a couple of, I don't know if it's bits of, it might actually only, I think it is only just bits of glue from the masking tape. It's just getting in the way of a smooth finish there. So I'm just going to make sure that I go back over that a bit later on with polish to make sure I get rid of even anything that just sensitive to the fingers. You know how your fingers are very sensitive and can pick up any imperfections on a surface, and what you don't want is a guitar neck that you can feel a tiny blemish on it as you slide your hand up and down the guitar neck. That's a waste or a shame to have that on such a nice guitar. So that's one of the things actually I always pay special attention to, and if I need to, and I've done it on a couple of guitars, and I've got one still to polish out tomorrow actually, but if I have to, what I'll do is use the micro mesh papers to either fill a little hole with a bit of lacquer, leave it a week, and come back and then take that back to flat with the micro mesh papers and then polish it up shiny again, so it looks like it's part of the original finish. But it really is worth taking that time, particularly if you've got any dents or miniature blemishes on the neck, because your fingers will kind of worry it to death. They'll pick it up, and it spoils an otherwise great guitar. It's just, every time you slide your hand up, there's this tiny little imperfection that your hand alone can feel, even though your eye probably can't see it. So it's a real shame to spoil it when there's no good reason for it. Okay, so that's me for a minute now. I've got a mission to run in the not too distant future. I've got to go and pick Thomas up. Before I'll do it, I'll string the guitar and let the strings put the neck under tension. When I've done that, I'll take a little break and we'll come back for the final job of the evening, which will be setting the action and the intonation, and then we'll be done for this guitar in one session, which is good because it's all in fairly good nick, so a nice guitar to work with. Nothing too challenging about this. You'll be pleased to hear. I'll be very careful not to dangle it in the cup of tea. Now, my advice when stringing is to stand by with a pair of pliers and cut. You need to cut. I cut 2 inches longer than I actually need for the peg, but only 2 inches, because what I don't want is a massive bird's nest of stuff hanging off this peg, and then I will use a string winder to just get that thing going, catch onto it, and then I'll put the whole thing under tension until I can bring it down to the fretboard. I'm a little bit messy here today, so I've given myself limited space for this, which is probably not the best thing in the world. What I will do, on a Strat, you want to always double check that the I don't know what some people call it a nipple, some people call it the little barrel. You want to check that the little barrel of the string is in fact all the way through. There's nothing worse than thinking it's through, but it's actually just caught on the edge. And what happens is you'll tighten it all up like this, and then suddenly, without you expecting it, it'll bang forward, and you'll get suddenly a slack string because it's popped into its correct place. That's not a problem, except that in doing that, it will have crimped the string in one place, and that place will now jump forward. So that point at which it folds over here will now jump forward and become a point there, which means part of your playing length of the string is now weakened, which is absolutely not a great idea. So try, if you can, to make sure, as you're putting this string through the first time round, do what you can to make sure, even if before you tighten it, ensure that it's gone all the way through, and you're not going to get this springing forward, popping effect, because it'll weaken the string. And that's something you can do without, really. We've got two string trees on here, remember, so we're going to ensure that as we move on to this next string, we're going to hook that onto the string tree. Again, I'm going to move these two bits of metal out of the way because they're worrying me. That's right, give me some more room to do this. Yeah, so we're going to ensure that we engage the string trees correctly. Correctly engage the correct string tree is probably what I want to say. And you can see that I'm working with a towel. I had some, underneath the towel, some neoprene stuff, which when it was clean, it was quite a nice surface just to work on its own. But it's got a little bit dirty recently, so I'm less kind of keen to work directly on it. So I put a towel over which I can take off and wash when it gets grubby. But the towel is a bit harder to clean as we go along, and it sort of hides sometimes little bits of metal swarf that come off, I don't know, whatever we're doing. So it has its pros and cons. Right, so first string tree now engaged. And after years of putting on strings, I'm always trying to keep them under tension as we're winding them on, because what I want to do is to ensure that they don't, either the string barrel doesn't drop back down and get caught on the ledge on the way through again and create that problem, or that it doesn't sag off and get caught around something else and I end up tightening it around the side of the thingamajig. So a number of ways you can put strings on, but I guess the thing to be careful about is you don't want too much leftover string, and you want the string to wind on, preferably not near the top of the post, because you don't want it. You want there to be a bit of an angle, as it comes up over the nut. You don't want it coming. You don't want it horizontal, completely horizontal. The string tree is there to ensure there is a bit of an angle, so as long as you engage the string tree, you should have the correct angle. But even still, as a sort of practice, I like to try and make sure that I wind onto the post in the right sort of part of the thing. All the way through. This can be an utter nightmare if you're doing it with cats present. I've had some crazy moments trying to string a guitar, put new strings on the guitar when the cats are about. They really, really like to chase the dangling string, which can be a real challenge, and a frustrating one at that. Now, messed this one up now. Always the way. not put it through far enough to get a bend on it to hold it in place, and it's now starting to be bent all over the place instead of where I really want it. I'll try and put it under some pressure to keep it, hold it where it should be in order to get it bite on. And now it's not working. I'm going to hold it here. Ow! And then you go and stab yourself with the next door string, which is always the way. Now at this point you start to get the likelihood of the string having dropped through because you've lost tension on it. Blood coming out of your wound, and you're running out of space because you cut T's everywhere. And what I've just noticed is this tuning peg is nowhere near tight enough, so I'm going to have to go and reverse engineer tightening up of this tuner, which is not great. And this sticky up now piece of string that's already claimed blood is laughing at me, of course. Right, one more, and then I'm going to just pay attention to those tuners. I'll have to find a spanner that works for that now. If I hadn't have already put the strings on, I would have done that with a adjustable spanner. It's probably the easiest tool to use in that case. But having put the strings on, I can't go over the top of them now with an adjustable spanner, so it will have to be some other spanner. I remember there was a time before string winders were even invented, and this process would have taken a very long time and would have ended up with very sore muscles in your hand from putting on strings. That was a nightmare. That's flinging some. Right, okay, so we've basically got our strings on. For now, I'm going to just put them and bring them up to a bit of tension, and then we're going to let the tension, let the neck take up the slack. As you know, or probably know, the new strings will always slack off. So part of the process of putting new strings on is giving them a bit of a tug and then go back. Boring bit for you. Very well. Okay, what am I seeing here? I'm seeing nothing. Great. Okay, so everything nicely back together again. I'm now going to leave this sit and stew for a while, and I will come back to it a little bit later on, and we'll do the set the action, or set the relief in the neck correctly. Now we're under tension, we'll put back the right amount of bow in the neck. We'll then set the basic playing action down at the bridge. Once we've done that, we'll go and then check and, if necessary, set the nut action. We'll tighten up the tuners because we noticed a loose one, and then we will finish up by intonating the guitar, and it will be ready to photograph and list. And play a bit. Okay, back again, and we have one very nice looking Squier Strat Affinity in sparkly black with sparkly silver pick guard, and we have the neck now under load, and we're getting to a place now where we want to just do the final tweaks to this guitar. First one is going to be checking the relief in the neck, and because of the load now on the neck, there is a little relief, and I'm going to go back to where I was before, which was I'm going to put a V-shaped turn into it the opposite way. This time last time I went clockwise, this time I'm going to go anti-clockwise. So I'm going to go back there, and that's all I'm going to do, that tiny little adjustment, just to put us back where we were. Now, when you check the relief in your neck, don't hold the neck to do it, because you'll put a pressure on it and it will bend. It's a flexible thing. Now we've got awfully high action here at the moment. We've got quite a bit of leeway to lower it. One of the things that when you get a guitar like this, one of the things you've got to think about is, if you're going to take the action down quite away to a really low playing action, you've got to ask yourself, have you got the leeway to do it on here? And if you haven't, the only alternative you might have to get the action you want is to raise the neck with a shim. And I prefer not to do that, because a shim breaks up the two surfaces more than I'd like to. It's better to have two bolted surfaces bolted tightly together than to put a shim in between them, which creates a bit of a gap. But sometimes that's what you have to do to get the angle of the neck that you need to get the action you want. But this guitar will work on the action from here. Okay, so we've got the relief we want, and now we're going to go with the action, and to do that we're going to use make adjustments to the bridge using, see if I can get this, sorry, my camera work isn't the best. Okay, it's not really what I wanted to do. Let's see if that will work. That's about okay. Okay, to work on the bridge we will use a little Allen key, and again make adjustments here. I'm going to take this, just do this by eye to begin with, and I want to take this one right down to give myself a fairly low starting point. Now if you want to, you can get your little measuring thing out and put it down to what you know is, I don't know, 1.5 millimeters or whatever you're comfortable with. I'm going to go, I'll just sort of do it manually to begin with, although it's entirely possible to get the little metal ruler out. What I'm hoping is that we can get to the action we want without running out of adjustment here. That's the most important thing. Of course this will make the note go flat by miles, because it's taken the pressure off the note, off the string. That puts it under tension again. Quite a lot of room to take down on here on the nut, which will of course at the same time bring down the action here as well. So I'm going to start with this as the bass line, and I'm going to bring all the others down to meet it, or to based off that first string. and I'm going to need two hands here to keep the pressure on this. So the downside of this, when you have as big a change in action as this, from the way that the player had it before, whether they were forced to have it that way or not, or just some sort of bizarre preference, the problem is you end up with these little grub screws sticking miles out. That's the downside, and I find that they can be quite uncomfortable on the palm of your hand if you're palm muting, but there's no real ways around that. You're kind of stuck with it. That's how it is. Now I'm sort of going for, it's quite hard in this light, I'm wearing these ultra zoom in reading glasses, but I'm going to get them all down to roughly the same level, and then I'm going to look to put a bit of a profile, or a kind of radius, or mimic the radius of the fretboard, if I can. And that just allows me to follow the radius, the shape of the fretboard, so that the strings aren't just a flat line. They hopefully track that shape. I can see that the grub screws really are going to end up sticking out miles, but we will get a lovely playing action out of it, that's for sure. It's got just about enough adjustment room to do it. You know, if it was my guitar and if I couldn't live with the screws sticking out the way they do, which is, there's nothing wrong with it, they're meant to do that, then I might be tempted to put that what do you call it, shim in there. So that's just a quick start point. This is a rough guesstimate at this point in the game, and what I'm sort of interested in is just to see where this falls. We can do a little measurement here, and on the bass side, we're looking at, because I can't see because the lighting is all over the place, thinks to himself, where's a light going to come from? Make a light come from here, but it's a bit, oh yeah, just about do it. Not very effective. Okay, 0.51, 1.5 mil on the bass at this end, and something similar on the top end. So, yeah, downside of not having, if you don't map the radius or track the shape of the guitar neck, you create problems bending the strings. So I'm going to go upwards a little bit with this second B string here, and I'm going to then follow that curve with the impossible to hold these things. It needs to be in a screwdriver format, not this bloody Allen key nonsense. And then bring that one up to meet it. And then this one down a bit. It's not right. Let's have a look. Yeah, nearly there. And again, this isn't exact. This is just for the purpose right now of getting a workable action from which we can do a bit of work on the nut end, which will again bring the whole overall action down, and we will make further tweaks. But it's a good start. I'm quite happy with this, how it's come out. Yeah, not too bad. Okay, so we're going to hold off that for a second, and that's our start point for our action, playing action at the bridge. And this is immediately a different transform of the guitar, but now we're going to do a little bit of alteration here at the nut, and that is going to change the playing action again, but for the better. So I'm going to work out what to do with this one. So I'm going to get some feeler gauges, because they're handy to start with, and I'm going to get a little triangular file, because I have a feeling triangular file might be the way forward on this one. So what we've got is, as I explained at some length earlier on, we've got a situation where the height of the strings passing over the first fret is critical to how this guitar plays. If it's too high, the guitar is both difficult to play physically, hard to fret chords for newcomers to the guitar, and for experienced players it's just tiring. But irrespective of your level of experience, if this height is a millimetre or half a millimetre too high, what happens is when you squeeze the strings down to form a chord around these area here, around the open chords area, what happens is that you are forced to press so hard that you bend the notes slightly sharp, and so what can sound like a perfectly tuned guitar when you tune it to a tuner or relative tuning can then suddenly start sounding really unpleasant and muddy when you start fretting open chords, which of course you think is counterintuitive. If you've got it in tune, the chords that should really sound in tune are the chords played on the the open chords on the lower part of the neck. But it's not, because of this height of the strings of the first fret. If you have that problem, then this causes these notes fretted here to go sharp. So the guide that I always use is, I say that whatever the distance, when you press down this first fret with a capo or with your finger, this first string on the first fret, whatever the height is of the string over this fret, you should aim for that to be the height of your first fret. Now, for some people who've never played a guitar that's set up like that before, it can feel incredibly low, almost uncomfortably so, because it makes fretting the chords down here almost uncomfortably easy, and that sounds like a really weird thing to say. Now I'm just feeling my way around this guitar at the moment, trying to assess it. And actually, it has a really nice action, a nice feeling action, but I am not experienced exactly, but I've been playing for a long time, so making chords down here isn't a problem for me. The way to test this is to use your tuner, and you can plug in an amp for this purpose. The iPhone has a number of really good tuners, but if whatever one you use a chromatic tuner that gives you a visual readout like this. I think it'll even do it on a unplugged in string. Okay, that's in tune. This should be an F, right? But look, it's sharp. That should be a G. Slightly sharp. Guess what? The A will be true. C will be, what do we reckon, or D, what do we reckon D will be? Flat. There you go. So that's interesting. Fretted notes here, sharp, evens out, flat. So we know that we haven't set the intonation right anyway, that's one thing. But even when the intonation is, the basic intonation is set right, what you'll find is if this nut is too, this string distance over the first fret is too high, you will find that the notes, because particularly on the F, because you're having to push so far down to get to fret this string, you'll find that that's a nice E. Well, it's not now, but even when you've got this tuned to a nice E, pressing hard to get an F makes it way sharp. So one advantage, even though it's quite easy to play right now, one advantage of taking these bass strings down a little bit more is it means you'll reduce the amount of pressure you have to put on them to fret them, and in turn it will mean they are slightly less sharp than they would otherwise be. It's not exact science, because anywhere you grab a chord and press down the strings, you can squeeze really hard if you want to, make something go sharp. But we're looking for something here in terms of action. We're looking for something that feels comfortable to play, allows the notes to ring out, but also doesn't really, certainly doesn't make the note go sharp when you fret it. So it's pretty good, but I think there's a little room in there for taking down a tiny bit more, and we do know as a guide, as I said, if we really want to, we could go as low as the height of the string over the first fret when we capo the first fret, and if you want to, you can get your measures. I'll get my metric gauges out and I'll pull out something like, let's start with 30. I haven't brought my capo. I never bring the capo out here for some reason. So I'm just going to fret this E string on the first fret, and I'm just going to look and see what the gap is under that, what's the new first fret. And you kind of know the gap when the feeler gauge sticks and it's knocking against the string. So it's 0.3 is too big, the gap is not that big. I expect, as is the case with this basic action, as I tend to set up on most guitars, it'll be around 0.25, which is the common one. In fact, it's a little bit less than 0.25, it's really about 0.2, but I always err on the side of 0.25, and it could even go 3 to make sure you don't overcut it. But let's say, in fact, I tell you what, let's do that. Let's give ourselves lots of margin, room for recovery. And let's go with a 0.3. And we know that's higher than we really want it, but in fact it's approximately what it is on the second fret away from our new nut. But anyway, so what we're looking for is we're going to aim to take this slot in the nut down to make this gap 0.3, and at the moment it's a little bit higher than 0.3, only a tiny bit, but we'll take it down a little tiny bit just to make it that a little easier to play, and also to ensure that when you fret that note, it goes as little sharp, as least sharp as possible, as little sharp as possible. So I'm going to use these little welding nozzle cleaners, and they're kind of abrasive little files effectively. They're not made for guitars, but they work pretty well. And I'm going to drop them into this slot here, and I'm going to use them to cut the slot just a little bit further down than it was. I'm going to take this very carefully because I don't want to overdo it, because if I overdo it I've got nowhere to go. I'll have to put a new nut on. Now when we tighten it back up, we don't need to be exactly perfectly in tune. I'm tightening it just high enough, or tight enough, just so that it's back under its normal pressure. And again, I'm looking for 0.3 over the first fret, and I can still see there's a gap, fresh air gap, so I can take it down some more. And what this is going to do is it's going to make the playing a little bit easier. It's going to feel a bit easier to hold chords, and it's also going to just marginally prevent the notes from going sharp. It's not going to stop it altogether. The nature of this is it's not 100% exact, but it's going to make it less sharp, and that will just improve the overall intonation of your chords when you're playing, or individual notes, single notes when you're playing. So there's no harm in doing it. Now, originally you heard me say I might do it with this file. I'm always tempted to do it with the file because actually this file makes the job a lot easier. It makes bigger slots, but I actually have a theory. I think those slots are more stable, or more appropriate for running a bass string or any strings through than the conventional slot. But I'm sort of, I have that as a theory, and I'm still a little bit nervous of doing it because I guess partly I don't want a load of flack from other people who see me doing it and go, that's very wrong. But also, it may, I don't know, it results in some very different shapes or unusual V-shaped slots on your nut, which some buyers may be put off with. Although actually, I have a strong argument why I think it is a more effective way of doing it. But I don't know. Maybe I'll buck up my courage over time when, I don't know, maybe we've got a bit more of a better reputation or something. But it is I could bore you with why it's a good. I think it's a good way of doing it. It's also downside easier because you are not having to use these fiddly little things. You're just using a single file for all six slots, and it's kind of easy to control because by definition the file is stiffer. It's stiffer, and therefore you've got more control over it. Okay, so you can see I'm still using at the stage I'm still using the feeler gauge, and I've gone for a very conservative 0.3 of a millimetre, which gives me, a big margin of error. So if I cut this a little bit too far, I'm not going to mess it up totally. We're nearly there, and I can see it by putting the feeler gauge blade underneath the string, and I can see how much movement I've got in the string before it connects with the blade. So we're almost there. And then when I've done this one, I'm going to move on to the other ones. But this time, for doing all the rest, I'm not going to use the feeler gauge. I'm not going to use the feeler gauge, I'm going to do it by eye, as I mentioned earlier on. And it's kind of scary to think that, oh my god, we're going to put aside the gauge and we're going to just judge this visually. And as I said, your eye is a very acute organ, and it can spot the correct distances and gaps perfectly, and you don't need the gauge to do the rest of this. So I have set that action at 0.3 of a millimetre. Doesn't look that much different. It's actually a bit higher an action than I normally would have. I'm being highly conservative here. I'm in danger of sacrificing my good name for ultra carefulness, and I've just gone and bent bloody feeler gauge. It's not what you want to do. Yeah, I'm being ultra conservative, and in a sense what I'm doing is I'm sacrificing the sort of trademark wonderful action So I'm going to go back to the 0.25. Which in itself is a conservative guess, and that doesn't help that I've done 0.025 imperial, which is a bit scary because that suddenly was very wrong. So I'm going 0.25 mil, and when I put the 0.25 mil under there, it's so close to being 0.3, but there is still a little bit more to go down, so I'll drop a little bit more. Make sure these are very, very closely matched, and it's quite hard to see which is the big one and which is the... Okay, again, trust your eyes, it's that one. Some nuts are made of very plasticky material, and sometimes they're really, really hard to cut, and they just seem to just shine. You know, they make a shiny groove, and don't seem to want to go down any further. Okay, so I'm going to stop there with that one. Nice. Again, it feels a little higher than I'd normally have it, but if this is for my old mate Bob, I think this would suit him. So now I'm going to visually, I'm going to change which of these blades I'm using. Move on to my A-string version. And I'm going to do this by visual comparison as I go down. And I know I can see what I'm looking for. I see the gap I'm looking for visually. And I'm going to go across on the A-string now and aim for that gap there. Doing the same thing of cutting down a little bit. Again, little bit by little bit. Little bit by little bit. Don't rush it, because you'll end up overdoing it and having to come backwards by buying a new nut. Or there is a kind of temporary fix, and it involves, believe it or not, baking powder and super glue, and it's really effective. It's really effective, but it makes a bit of a mess if you're trying to do it on a black nut. So as it happens, I have a spare nut, so if I mess this up I can replace the nut, but you'd ideally not want to end up in that position. So it's just judging this, very small amounts taken off each time is the way to go. Don't overcut it. You can always take a bit more off, but you obviously will struggle to put any back on unless you are using a white nut and you want to do the super glue. Super glue and baking powder trick. Again, more to go. So just a whole matter of slacking off, taking some more away. Again, this is a funny plasticky kind of material. It's not very brittle, and so it's taking its time cutting down. It's probably a good thing, so I don't want to get impatient. Do some more to go. Okay, I think we're almost there. Feels about right. And then again, I can see now the gap to the D string, the difference between that and the D string is quite significant. So we'll change over to the D sized one, which is this one, and work onwards. And I think actually we don't need to. There's not much needs doing on the G, the B, and the E. It's the D, and I can judge it by actually the shadows. There's a number of ways I can judge it, but I can see that this D string is quite a way higher than the others at the moment. So again, cutting that slot down a bit. Using all these cues, I can see it's still too high. So it's not a quick process, as you can tell, but it's not hugely scientific either. It's just a matter of kind of pecking away at it bit by bit until you get down to the kind of playing action you want. And it is the bit. This is the bit that really makes the difference when people pick the guitar up for the first time and they go wow, and they feel the action compared to any guitar they maybe have at home or they had as a kid or they remember playing. And it's this extra bit of time and precision and effort that really makes the difference. And we're nearly there. This one, still a bit of work to do. Actually, yeah, but it's starting to get there a bit more on this. But yeah, this makes the difference, and it is. In some ways, the overall playing action set at the bridge, sometimes could be quite high and still be, bearable. You can enjoy playing a guitar that's set quite high there. But if you're playing one where the action is even a millimetre wrong on the nut, it's there. Your fun will stop. And that's why this is so rewarding to do this right. Still a tiny bit more to go. So slowly but surely, you see that the pace at which we're going, it's going to be hard to make a catastrophic mistake. And that applies to you. So you feel confident to have a go at this, because if you provide yourself with a spare nut. Sorry, I never finished a sentence doing this. If you provide yourself with a spare nut, then you'd be covered. In the event of getting it wrong, you can always start again. But as I say, trust your eyes, and you won't go wrong. Your eyes know when you're at the right. You can see the gaps. You can judge these shadows perfectly. Far better than you'd think, in fact. So having just used the feeler gauge for the first set the first height. Everything after that I'm doing by comparative shadows and by eye, judging the gap by eye. So those first three are done. A little bit to do on the G. So we get the G version out of here. Again, it's quite difficult to know which is which. They get very small and fiddly very quickly, and actually quite difficult to work with. But what's also true is that when you get down to the very thin ones, they can start cutting very quickly. So you might have been wearing away, sawing away for ages on the old thick ones, and then suddenly you find yourself going too fast, and suddenly finding you've gone too far and you need to go back and repair. So if you're going to overcook it, I think it's going to be on the top three, if you use this technique, using these fine cutters, if anywhere. always kind of aware of that. Still a gap. Difficult to cut. And it's this point where I really could be, I'd be much happier if I was using the diamond shaped file to be cutting these, because it would make the whole thing much easier. Especially around the smaller ones now, because they're beginning to get slightly unmanageable, because they're bending more than they're doing anything else. Now, I am going to actually stop there, and I'm going to give a note and tune this back up. A bit of cleaning needed doing either side of that selector, didn't notice that. Okay, so a quick scoop down the length of this, a quick look over the end there, and a quick look at how the strings fall in relation to each other. What I do see is that G string is a bit higher than everyone else, so I'm going to bring him down a bit in line. So we've got a kind of consistent spread. And G could come down a tiny bit more actually, but ooh. Okay, I'm going to go from there. It feels good to me. And now I'm just going to get ready to do the intonation. I'm just give it last string pull here to make sure we've got the stability and the tuning. And I'm going to pull up an amp. And this is the point where we go into intonation. It'll take a few minutes and we'll be done. So, we want a clean sound, no effects, and we need batteries in there. That would help, wouldn't it? Yes. Okay, we have. Right, good. Again, now we're going to need the, to do this job we're going to need a screwdriver. I need my specs again. We need the tuner, we're going to need the amp, and we're going to go at this with a longer barrelled screwdriver than that we've currently got, which will be somewhere. Something tells me it's already out, but I don't know where it is. It's a bit annoying. Not there, not there, not there. Not tucked away behind there. So where is it? Where is it? Staring me in the face, of course. What else? Right. Okay, so I'm going to put a square screwdriver bit in the end of here. It's actually a little bit larger than I'd want, but let's see if we can see if it works anyway. Yeah, that works. It's good and solid. Positive. Okay. So what we're going to do, this is the easy and fun bit now. We've done all the hard work. So to intonate the guitar, what are we trying to do? Well, so the intonation is, how do I describe this? I've tried this different, this is a different description every time, but let's try this. So, what you want when you make a guitar, you put a neck together with a body and then some strings, is the thing you've already done when you build a guitar is in building the neck you have fixed the relationship between notes on your fretboard. So you've said I've built a fretboard with frets that come closer and closer together as we go further down the neck, and these things get close together in a mathematical formula. One of the variables in that formula is what's called the scale length, and the scale length is the it's I suppose the nominal free vibrating length of the string. So this guitar and many other guitars will be made to a fairly standard scale length, and I think on a Strat it's 25.5 or something inches, and it means the distance between the nut and the nominal centre point of the bridge. And so when somebody comes to manufacture necks, they feed the 25.5 inches, whatever that exact figure is, into their calculation, and the result is a neck where the frets come grow closer together at a certain rate, and that rate is such that when you fret your notes on a string of a certain length, each note you fret is perfectly at a perfect interval compared to the previous one, which means that they stay in tune. They don't go sharp or flat as you go up. So somebody might, if you're thinking about it, you might say, if that's an E, why is that an E as well? How do you know to make that an E? Well, it's because this fret here is placed in an exact position based on the scale length of this. Then the mathematics tells you that that fret has to be positioned there in order to play a note which is exactly an octave higher than the open note. Now, if your string's too short, okay, that won't be right then. Suddenly, this note will no longer be an octave of that open note. If this string is too short, when you press there, it'll be sharp. It'll be much sharper. And if it's too long, it'll be flat, and you'd have to bend it to get it to be a perfect octave of the open E. So the whole point about intonation on a guitar is that by the time you put a manufactured neck into a guitar with a certain set of thickness strings, what's going to have to happen is, to get the intonation perfect, you've got freedom to adjust the scale length, if you like, of every single string, and each string will be slightly different. But once you've got them intonated, it means that you know that every note on here is perfectly in tune in relation to every other note in here. And you do this job, you set the length of the string, not by measuring it. You can do, you get a microscopic ruler or something and try and get it exact, but you do it using the tuning, using a tuner. And here's how you do it. So we'll start with the E string, and I'm going to damp all the other strings except the E. So the first thing we're going to do is tune the harmonic. So I'm going to ping the harmonic. I'm going to tune that to an E. Okay, and you can see that's stable. That's an E. Now, if this string is the right length on this arrangement now for this neck, we will get, when we fret this note on the 12th fret, it will be exactly the same according to the tuner as the pinged note. Ready? And you can see that it's telling us it's slightly flat. And that tells us that the overall length of the string is too long. And we need to shorten that string slightly, so we take the screwdriver to the little screw at the back and we turn it in whichever way sends the bridge saddle that way to shorten the string. Okay, so I'm going to say it's anti-clockwise, so do a few turns anti-clockwise. That's going to slacken this string off, so we need to retune it. Still slightly flat, so I'm going to do a couple more turns anti-clockwise. And the reason I'm using a long-handled or long shaft screwdriver is to avoid getting any damage to the lacquer at the back here. That's about spot on, even though the ping is slightly sharp and so is the 12th fret, the same amount sharp. So look at how it goes. That's now dead on, and so is that. So that is intonated perfectly. That means the string is exactly the right length for this neck body combination. Okay. That's very close. I'm going to leave that. And so is that. Close enough. I've started off by setting these staggered in the familiar position that you'll normally find the bridges when they're correct, the saddles when they're correctly intonated. So I'm kind of cheating a bit because I guessed a relative position of them, but that was quite lucky that I got it right. If anything, that's just a tiny bit sharp, and a tiny bit sharp means we want to lengthen the string, so this time we're going to go clockwise a little bit, but not much because it's very, very close. turns. That will increase the pitch now, so we'll now tune it again. Still sharp, so we're going to go longer again, so clockwise, and this time I'll do it a couple of turns. It should tighten up the pitch. Close enough for me. Again, close enough. Sharp, so it's too short, so we're going to lengthen it by going anti-clockwise a couple of turns. Oh no, the other way, sorry. Lengthen it by going clockwise a couple of turns. A couple more turns clockwise and we're almost there. Very close. Another couple of clockwise turns and going to be it. So there we have it, intonation in perfect order. I'm going to do tuning now. Different snare output from that humbucker, eh? So, it's interesting that humbucker is so much more powerful than the others. It gives you a real sense of just being able to flick that switch down and go into your lead guitar break. Sort of an easy, quick way of getting some bite cutting through, which is interesting. I'm just going to pull up these pickups slightly higher, just to see if we can get a little bit more out of them to balance that up, because it's maybe not exactly what we want to do, but we'll see. Still bedding the strings in a little bit. Tune up once more. Take a couple of plays to get it all bedded in, and then what we have, of course, is our tremolio that we want to. Is that actually doing up? Yeah. So, depends on how you want to have it. You can have it dangling free, but so the nice thing about getting your intonation right on your guitar is that it means that chords that are in tune down here are also in tune up here. It's out of tune now, but it's not the fault of the intonation. And so this tremolo is also quite delicate, but it's workable. Okay, so unfortunately you don't have a great display of guitar playing to demonstrate how good this guitar is, but there we are, we've reached the end. I think it's nicely intonated. Well, I know it's nicely intonated. We are complete. The action is set to what I think is a really nice level. And if you're Jeff Beck, you'd enjoy playing the tremolo on this. So what we need is a bit of sunshine tomorrow, and we'll get this out on the deck and do a little photo shoot in the sunshine. I also might want to put a bit of lacquer onto this gap here, this chunk taken out. In fact, what I'll do is I'll start out by doing that while we're here, just to get it underway. So we've got lots of this nice clear lacquer to work with, and we don't want to put it on too heavy or too thick, so we'll put it on in several layers over several days, and I'll leave it for a week so that we can come back to it and level it or smooth it out and blend it in to the rest of the paintwork. Luckily the nice metallic paint wasn't damaged on this particular part here. It's just the clear lacquer that's been donked somewhere. So we put it on fairly thick because we can come down and smooth it afterwards, but it will also contract a little bit while it dries. And I'm going to leave this thing standing up here as upright as I can get it, and to do that I'll just prop it up against this bottle. What I don't want is too much of a I don't want it falling over, but I also don't want a great big blob of lacquer going in the opposite direction down the side of the guitar, which I don't think it will. I'll just stick where it is now. Right, so everything in order. This is okay. I might put another thing here just to render it safe. What do I have immediately to hand? Let's go to the weight. Not that. Never find something convenient size when you want it. I suppose this has got some weight. In fact, this has some weight, but there's no reason why I'm holding on to this. This should go in the bin because it doesn't work. Right, that'll be added to it just to hold it in place. Make sure it's not going to tip anywhere overnight. That's fine. Good. Right. So now we have the Squier Stratocaster by Fender, the Affinity series. A really nice basic guitar, made even nicer over the space of about 3.5 hours. If you're the lucky buyer of this guitar, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and it's been a pleasure to be able to show you what we've done to make sure that it's as good as it is. So, as with everything in Reloved Guitars, we've taken what is essentially a perfectly good basic start point, which is the Fender Squier range, but as I've said many times throughout this, really badly set up, in fact not set up at all, which is bad. And as a result can be an absolute dog of a guitar, and in fact it typically becomes a dog of a guitar. The more time passes since it's sold, the more people fiddle with it, trying desperately to get it to play better, and the worse it ends up playing. So the nice part for us is getting hold of these guitars, knowing that basically they are all told, very good basic guitars. There's nothing wrong with it once you get your hands on it and you go through a series of steps like we've done to put it back into good playing order. It's a real pleasure to do. So I hope that, having watched this, I hope you're the buyer of this guitar, because I think you're going to get loads of pleasure out of it. So bye for now.